and welcome to the podcast that doesn't know the meaning of the phrase false nine, but does know how to hold the ball up when playing against an agricultural centre-back called Dave. It's the big man up top.
Yes, it's the big man up top. I'm Joe.
And I'm Ed. How are you doing, Joe?
Good, Ed. I quite like a false nine.
Do you?
I've grown to love them, actually.
No.
Through Bobby Firmino was my first ever false nine.
Would you see a false nine in a Tony Pulis Stoke side? Absolutely not.
But you would see four centre-backs.
You would see four centre-backs, yes, definitely.
How was your weekend, Ed?
It was great. On Friday, I took my kids to the circus.
Yeah, you have a good time?
Yeah. There were clowns aplenty and all that, and yeah, they loved it.
But enough about Stoke City's home games.
Oh dear.
Did you actually go to a circus?
Genuinely did go to a circus, yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. Yeah, it was very wholesome. Yeah, there was no animals or anything. You know, it was all good. You know.
You'd expect them.
No, you can't have animals in circuses these days, Joe.
Can you not?
No.
Is it all like Diablos, all that?
It was all acrobatics and but it was fantastic. My youngest got absolutely terrified when the lights went off and the strobes came on, but she got into it.
Yeah, fair play. Well, it was a big weekend of footballing action. Shall we run through a few of the talking points?
Yeah,
Ed?
It was massive, wasn't it? Should we start with Man City Arsenal?
I think we should.
That felt like the big game everyone was waiting for.
It's our first bit of Barclays this season, I would say.
First bit of Barclays. Obviously, it was an incredible end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, superb. Well, it wasn't a superb goal, but it was an exciting late goal at the end for John Stones. The turning point really was with Trossard and the sending off. I want to know, what did you make of that?
Yeah, interesting. I think there's definitely been a bit of a clamp down this season about kicking the ball away. You know, this happened to Arsenal a few weeks ago. I was surprised by it. I think my initial reaction was, what is he doing? Surely this is something that Arsenal are very aware of now, the whole kicking the ball away. And I think Arsenal are known for being quite streetwise, quite smart. So I think when he did that, and he's not kicked it for like 60 yards down the pitch, it's kind of an ambiguous kind of loft, isn't it? He's not smashed it away.
Well, this is it, and I'm going to come to the aid of Arsenal's defence here, which I never thought I would say.
I'm sure they'll really appreciate
that. They'd love that. It looked to me like he was trying to play a quick pass. The game is so fast these days. It was a fraction of a second after the incident.
Yeah, and I think it's less about kicking the ball away. It's more about delaying the restart is the phrase that is used. Now it's down to discretion whether he was intentionally doing that. But I just think with all the conversation, particularly around Arsenal going on, you have to be wise to that.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't hate the decision of a second yellow, personally. See, I know that's controversial.
This is controversial because I'm going to be honest. I think it ruined the game.
Oh, it did.
And I think that I can't believe these words are even coming out of my mouth, but I'll just say it anyway. Even though I think it maybe technically was a yellow card, I think the referee should have been sensible and not given a yellow card. I think he should have taken him aside and said, "This is your last warning."
I think you're right. Yeah,
and he should have given him an extra chance to stay on the pitch. Man City fans will probably massively disagree with me, but
maybe so.
I just think it completely ruined the game. It ruined the spectacle. And let's be honest, at that point, the likelihood was, City will go on and win this now.
Absolutely.
And it was a minor miracle that Arsenal managed to perform so well that they got a point. You know, we were all expecting it'll be a matter of time before they break them down. And I think to put that on Arsenal, that didn't feel right to me. That's my
I think you're right.
Judgment.
I think there's something to be said about the context as well of the game. The point in the game, is Trossard trying to gain an advantage there by kicking it away? I think you're right about, should common sense be applied in that situation? Is this going to significantly change the way the game is going? And undoubtedly it did.
And you've heard, like, even just recently, I can't remember which referee it was. It might have been Clattenburg. It sounds like the kind of thing he would have said. But you've heard referees talk about how you have to play with the crowd in mind. You have to think about, am I going to give this I'm going to give the other team a little foul here.
This was the other day, wasn't it? I think in the Champions League, Clattenburg said
that's
when the crowd is against you, you give them a couple of fouls. Right? Which is quite a controversial thing to say.
It is. It's very controversial.
I've never heard a ref be so open about that.
But I think it's just the reality of the situation is that they're not just managing the game that's on the pitch, they're also managing the entire event as well. They shouldn't be, but that's just
They
the way
are.
it is.
And look, we could have a whole conversation about officiating.
We could. And maybe we should.
Maybe we should. It's such a hard job.
Such a hard job. And let's be honest, refs do not get the credit they deserve. They get a lot of stick that they don't deserve. And we'll chat about that another time, I'm sure.
Let's do it.
Could we touch on Aston Villa Wolves?
Yeah, please.
Because that was a really great game at Villa Park. High tempo, a bit feisty as well, but just enough.
West Midlands derby, of course.
Midlands derby, late goals. It had everything.
And another goal by John Duran off the bench.
Another goal by John Duran.
Now, this is an interesting thing of... Obviously, it's working, bringing him off the bench. As a player, he's not going to want to stay on the bench forever. So what do you do about that?
Well, I mean, you've always had super subs, ever since we've been allowed to bring them on. But the likes of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at United, he would start and not score, but you bring him on with 10 minutes to go and he would almost guarantee you a goal. So I think there's something to it. So yeah, I think it's great. Keep him on the bench.
Keep him on the bench. I think this is a growing conversation as well. We had this about England at the Euros, and I think you're having it about teams like Chelsea who have such bloated squads now. You almost have your starters and your finishers. You have your team that are going to start the game. Then on the hour mark, you bring players on to almost refresh it, and they finish the game. We saw it in the Euros with Cole Palmer, Ollie Watkins were brought on to do this. I think it's a growing trend. It's almost like an expansion of the super sub.
It was also the start of the WSL season this weekend.
Yes, Arsenal and City played each other in both the Men's Premier League and the WSL yesterday.
And it finished 2-2.
Yeah, so two absolute blockbusters.
Massive. Spurs beat Crystal Palace. I was reading an article about newcomers Crystal Palace, and it referred to 4-0 as being a thrashing.
Interesting.
4-0 away. I don't know, I thought that was a bit harsh. But anyway, I suppose it's just welcome to life in the big leagues.
Welcome to the WSL. I think this is a particularly interesting season in the WSL, and I think we're going to do a whole episode on that kind of thing. But it's the first season since 2011 that Chelsea haven't had Emma Hayes.
Absolutely. Somebody who's been instrumental in not just Chelsea, but actually just advances in the women's game, full stop.
100%. I think it's interesting that the clubs at the top of the WSL at the moment, Man City, Arsenal yesterday was seen as a bit of a title race game as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that's kind of mirrored across both the men's and the women's game in terms of which clubs are investing in the women's side of football.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a really intriguing conversation to be had. Something else that caught my eye the last couple of weeks, actually, Ed, I feel like I'm taking us back to 2013.
Okay, please do. Let me try and...
the glory years for you.
Let me visualise. I had a moustache that year.
Did you?
I did.
Just a moustache?
Yeah.
No beard?
No beard.
Bold from you.
I know, it did not look good.
No, I can imagine not. But Preston played Blackburn at the weekend, and Blackburn player Milutin Osmajic appeared to bite Owen Beck on the neck.
Oh, gosh.
It's very 2013 behaviour.
Yeah.
Thinking back to Luis Suarez, used to do this very regularly.
He did. He loved a good bite. Good bite.
I just think, and we saw this as well, Wrexham against Birmingham last Monday. Paul Mullin was caught contemplating biting someone on the leg.
Okay, so I missed this. How do you contemplate biting somebody?
So there was a video, and I think he'd been fouled, and he was on the floor, like kind of on top of the Birmingham player. You saw him look at his leg and almost go to bite it, and it's almost like you saw in his mind, oh yeah, there's cameras everywhere these days.
Yeah, I can't do this.
I'm not going to bite him. But I'm just like... It's biting back.
It's biting back. Oh my goodness.
I certainly hope not.
I think we can all profoundly agree. No, we do not want this. It was bizarre when Luis Suarez popularised it. We do not want this. In our game.
Let's leave it.
Let's leave that where it is, please.
So something that happened in the Spanish league on Sunday, Ed. Villarreal played Barcelona, and Barcelona won 5-1.
Right.
Ayoze Perez scored for Villarreal, which I like, because he's one of those players that you could tell me he plays at anyone across the top 5 European leagues.
Olympiacos.
Yeah.
Sure,
top 5 European leagues. Napoli.
FC Cologne.
PSV.
Yeah. Why not?
Hoffenheim. Yeah, he could play for any of those. but he played for Villarreal. Now, Villarreal actually scored another goal in this game, but it was disallowed for offside. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't.
It's an absolute beauty.
Right.
Ball played over the top. The guy takes it on his chest, keeps it up in the air, juggles it a bit, and lobs the keeper.
Wow.
It's genuinely, if it had counted, it's up there for a Puskas Award.
Okay.
It was so good. But this got me thinking, what is your favourite ever disallowed goal?
The one that springs to mind to me is the Peter Schmeichel goal, where he scored an overhead kick against Wimbledon, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
I think this was 97-ish. An absolute screamer. He ran up for a corner. The corner was an outswinger, and he was at the far post, and somebody heads it back towards the far post, and he sort of evaded his marker and bicycle kicked it into the net. But he'd strayed offside.
Oh, that's devastating. What a moment that would have been.
I know, yeah. Obviously, he had precedent for scoring in games, didn't he, Schmeichel? But what about yours, Joe?
City played against Tottenham in the Champions League. This was quite early on in the VAR days of the Champions League. High scoring contest between City and Tottenham at the Etihad. Raheem Sterling scores what he thinks is a winner. This is when City hadn't won the Champions League, so it was a huge moment to go through, and VAR rules it out for the tightest offside. And I just remember seeing Pep Guardiola fall to his knees, hands on his head.
Oh,
that's probably one of the most memorable disallowed goals I've ever seen.
There's something horrible about disallowed goals, because it's that sinking feeling of, especially if you're behind, if you're chasing a lead, and you get that goal, and then it feels so cruel, especially if it's an offside or whatever. It's like there's no comeback. Oh, it's gut-wrenching, isn't it?
Crushing, and it's something that VAR has made worse.
Yes.
Before, if it was offside or disallowed straight away, you're ripping the band-aid off straight away.
Yeah,
whereas these days, you've got that minute of thinking you've scored.
Definitely. It's another thing we can complain about VAR about.
Yeah. Let's add it to the list.
Bring back better disallowed goals.
So, Ed, it's time yet again
to
test your footballing brain.
So what's the score currently? 3-1?
3-1 to me, I believe.
3-1
Have
to
I
Joe.
got everyone right?
No, you haven't. But
Why not?
No, but
Which one did I get wrong?
I can't remember, but it doesn't matter.
So this is Guess the Player with a difference. I'm going to ask Ed a question, and the answer to that question is a footballer and also is a book of the Bible.
Okay, great.
Does that make sense, Ed?
You mean the player's first name, Joe?
The player's first name.
Good.
Correct. Yeah, thank you very much. So this week, I've got a good question for you. Simple question.
Okay.
Easy question.
Oh, no.
It's simply, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Who is the tallest outfield player currently playing in the Premier League?
Oh, gosh.
Easy.
Who is the
tallest outfield player currently playing in the Premier League?
I've absolutely no idea. You got to think centre back.
You got to think of some tall players.
You got to think centre back. You got to think of tall players. Will you give me a bit of time to think about it?
Oh, go on then. I'll give you the rest of the episode to work it out.
Okay, thank you.
It's quite an easy question, Ed. Come on.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Joe. So this weekend, Man City versus Newcastle. So there's been a lot of chat about Newcastle United and Man City with regards to their ownership particularly. So Manchester City, who are owned by the City Football Group, but that's majority owned by the Abu Dhabi United Group. Newcastle, they are 85% owned by the Public Investment Fund. It's the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. Some people have nicknamed it, maybe disparagingly, the oil firm derby.
Nice.
Or the oil classico.
Oil classico.
Yeah, so I think... So I thought it'd be a good time for us to just basically touch on a topic that neither of us are particularly qualified to talk about.
Sounds great.
Which is sports washing.
Yeah, this is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So sports washing is the idea that a nation or people on behalf of a nation are heavily investing in a sports brand or a team or even a whole sport to gain some global influence and almost to like normalize themselves and distract from what might be some human rights issues or something going on that they don't want as much publicity over. So you see it, there was conversations about the Qatar World Cup. Are they hosting a World Cup to gain popularity and distract from other stuff going on in their country? So it's a big topic.
And I think particularly as well, you can sort of really expand this out and just look at club ownership in general. I support Stoke City, who are owned by a gambling firm.
Yeah.
You know, and how do I feel about the fact that the money going into my club is made off the back of people with gambling addictions?
Yeah.
I don't feel great about that.
Yeah.
You know, each club has its own story of where the money has come from. And so I thought it would just be really great for us to, have a conversation about that. And one person who is a friend of the show is Graeme Mathie, who is the managing director of Ayr United in Scotland. And so I had a chat with him to find out a little bit about how he runs Ayr United. How you doing, Graeme?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, what about yourself?
Yeah, doing well, thanks. And thank you very much for joining us today. So first question, you're the managing director at Ayr United. Tell us a little bit about what does a managing director at a football club do? What is your day-to-day and what does it look like?
Great question. I guess there's loads of variety in it, would be the first thing I would say. So I got the opportunity a couple of years now, 2 years ago now, to take over as managing director. And I guess there was a bit of a space where there was an involved owner, local businessman who's operating a business that turns over 60 or 70 times what his football club does, and felt he was spending significantly more time on his football club than he was on his business that essentially made a huge amount more money. So there was a gap and a vacancy for somebody to come in and run it. My experience before that, I guess, was on the football side, and I'm now getting involved in ticketing tenders for a new ticketing company and tenders for a new kit company, thinking about how we can bring people at the stadium earlier, keep them for longer, thinking about how we can generate revenue, do season ticket campaigns and all of that type of stuff. So I guess that's a bit of a kind of higher level strategic thinking, but there's also loads of day-to-day stuff. It takes me back to my first day as sporting director at Hibs. A guy, Steph, who's a cleaner, was a great guy and really bubbly person about the place, but I'd just been promoted and it was kind of out there in the club channels and in the local media and stuff that I'd got this new role. And he popped his head into the office and he says, "Graeme, you've been promoted as sporting director." I said, "Oh, that's right, yeah. Oh, brilliant. Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Of course. What is it, Steph? How can I help you?" And he said, "I just want to know who orders the toilet roll for the toilets." He said, "Is it like the club or is it the cleaning company?" Is this the high level stuff I've signed up for here, just to figure out who actually orders the toilet roll? So I had to go and try and find them a solution, but that kept me humble in my first day, that it wasn't so much about trying to buy and sell players for millions of pounds or develop the youth academy or any of that stuff I'd been sold. It was to figure out who actually put toilet roll in the toilet. So there you go.
And that's important stuff, isn't it? People want to know where's the toilet roll coming from. Yeah.
Well, he did. That was the most important thing for that guy at that moment in time, and I was the man that had to go and deliver that answer for him. So as I say, that doesn't keep you humble, nothing will.
Yeah, servant-hearted. I think it says in scripture. Well, so that's interesting then, because what impact do you have in terms of the on the pitch stuff? The footballing side.
So the sporting director at Hibernian and the managing director at Ayr United, I think, are a bit similar, because I've got an opportunity to try and influence as much as I can what happens on the pitch. Down to leading the recruitment process for a head coach. And I do think that's it's an interesting concept in the UK, particularly because people feel, I think, are still a bit uncomfortable with the notion that we're bringing in a head coach or somebody that's really focused on the on-field tactical and technical development of players. And I think, by and large, we tend to probably prefer the notion that there's a manager who comes in and oversees everything at the whole club. It probably goes back to people like Arsene Wenger and Alex Ferguson, who had huge success running clubs for decades. But now, if you think about at that level, Premier League in England, the number of staff you're having to look after at the very top level now in comparison to their day is probably 20-fold. And I think that's where the role of this sporting director became a little bit more popular, as somebody that could actually be a bit of a buffer, let the head coach focus in on essentially winning games, picking his team, signing his players, doing his training, winning games, and hopefully there's somebody else there to share a bit of that burden and look after some of the other stuff and make sure there's toilet roll in the staff toilets. That
was Ferguson's thing, wasn't it? He knew the tea lady. He knew every person at that club at that time and had that kind of control. But I think you're right. It seems crazy that we would run a club in that way. I'd love you to share a little bit about your faith journey, and we're going to come on to talking about what impact that has in your sort of life in football.
So grew up in a Christian household. Mum and dad still go to the same church, and I think most people who have been to Church of Scotland churches would probably find them quite traditional ways of worship, etc. I think when I was a teenager, I would say age of 13, 14 was when I made my own personal commitment to faith. From there, it's been a journey, as you say, and I do think my faith has been a sort of core part of that throughout the rest of my life. Bigger challenges I think I've got just now in coming into leadership roles is, can people see an element of faith in me and how I go about my day-to-day work when I'm trying to lead an organisation? And that is a big challenge, because I'm exploring things like trying to challenge people sometimes. I'm trying to take them to places that are quite uncomfortable. I'm trying to take them right out of their comfort zone. And how do you do that in a compassionate way with empathy and all of the things that you should be displaying as a Christian? So that's not easy, I must admit.
I want to touch on a conversation we've been talking about on this podcast. It was about the sort of responsibility of a supporter, particularly in this age of state-owned football clubs. I often sort of wonder about, is that something I should care about? Do you think there's sort of a conversation to be had around who's owning our football clubs?
Oh, that's a $1 million question, Ed. I think you've thrown me a grenade there with that question in many ways.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely not going to be able to nail it and give you the right answer. But it's such a difficult question, isn't it? I'm doing a university course at the minute, and there's a big module on ethics. So I'm actually asking the question: so how do we feel about clubs who are getting financial charges against them for potential breaches achieving things? Is that okay? And all that the module taught us was about the really clear-cut ones. Lance Armstrong with the blood doping and all that stuff. By the time you know it and you look at it with the value of hindsight, it's clear-cut. And I guess we live in a world that isn't at all, So the World Cup now going to certain countries that, for the vast majority, I think, particularly the Western population, has views that we would see as wrong, and not moral or not ethical. But yet we take a really big global event there so that, again, they can raise their profile and make them some money. How ethical is that? Football is a mad game. Sport is a mad industry in many ways, and who knows what's going to crop up next. But I do think you're right. As a Christian, we should, I guess, have a view on what our money is going towards, or how the success of our team is actually being achieved. I think when you start going down that particular rabbit hole, it's a really, really challenging conversation, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And I look at a team, for example, like Stoke, because that's where my experience is. And I remember distinctly the decline in our city when Stoke got relegated from the Premier League. And I think it's natural for the wanting the prosperity of your city to say, you know what? However it's achieved on the pitch, let's do it. Brings in tourism, brings prosperity to the local economy, all that sort of stuff. And so I think there's arguments on both sides. And you're right, we're never gonna solve it. But that's really interesting that people like you are on those courses having those discussions, because I think that's where it's going to come from. It's going to come from the way that people lead clubs, the way that, whether that's owners, managing directors, head coaches, whatever. It's going to be like, how do we look at clubs and go, oh, I want my club run like that, whatever that is. And they'll look at that blueprint.
Yeah.
Listen, Graeme, I've taken up too much of your time already. Thank you for chatting with me, and come on, Ayr United.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Ed. Thanks again.
Ed, that was what they call a hospital pass.
It was a little bit.
End.
I'm really sorry, Graeme, but please sort this problem out for us, and then we can be happy and carry on with our lives.
100%. But I think for me, this kind of conversation is partly why we wanted to do this podcast. I think it's such a big topic. I think we're in a place in football where we know so much through social media, through journalism. We know so much about our clubs, more than we ever have before. About our club ownership, who they are as people, what they do. And I think for me, this does stem from the Qatar World Cup.
Yeah.
I think when that was going on, there was a lot of conversations about this isn't right, and that it's held in Qatar, this nation that doesn't really have a footballing past. And for me, there wasn't really that space to talk about a Christian response to that. How should we, as Christians, be responding to these issues?
The Qatar World Cup is a really good example, because you had, for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but more than ever before, the spotlights were on that country. I think it was a bit the same during the Russia World Cup as well, but so much more with the Qatar World Cup. And there was so many questions about everything from their human rights record to fan experience when they got there, and whether the country would be suitable to host the World Cup. There were documentaries made about it, and for the first time it felt like, okay, we know the issues here. As Christians, we should be people of justice. We should be people who are not happy with systems of injustice as well. But at the same time, how far does that extend? Just because a sport I love is taking place in a country where they do things that I may not agree with, is that something I should be standing up for? Because actually, truth be told, is that you can go right back to ancient Rome. There was a quote about bread and chariot races, and about basically if the people have got enough bread to eat and if they've got enough chariot races to distract them, then they will be happy.
Sure.
And so that's essentially sports washing as well.
The earliest known case of sports washing.
Absolutely. And you have things like there have been World Cups in America. Their human rights record isn't good. It's different, but it's, again, you could point to most nations to say, well, I don't like that aspect of what you're doing. So part of me just thinks, is this something I really need to get involved with?
Sure.
And the answer is I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know. And I think, and also it's not something that's spoke about in the Bible, is it? If we're thinking about a Christian response, it doesn't say, thou shalt not support a nation-state-owned club.
Thou shalt not support Newcastle.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't talk about that. For me, it comes down to an individual decision, isn't it? And I think something the Bible does say is that we are created with a conscience.
Yeah.
We are created with this mindset of we have to make decisions in our life that align with our morals that we have from the Bible, from our Christian faith. And I think the big thing for me here is you can make a decision that aligns with your conscience, but that doesn't mean you can tell other people what aligns with their conscience. And, I think that's a bigger conversation for me of this is a personal decision.
Interestingly, there's a verse in Isaiah chapter 1 that says, learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause, which I think it's amazing. And that's one of the verses that really does challenge me in this situation. How am I seeking justice as a football fan? You just heard me a few minutes ago talk about how I don't think a yellow card should have been given to Trossard, but it's
very different.
Well, maybe. But the point is that there are ways that we can still be, this is a hobby for most people, going to support their team. And how can we do that and also seek to correct the oppression that is going on elsewhere? I think that is between you and God, really, to decide, Lord, what do you want me to do in this situation? And if somebody feels led to go, you know what, I can't in good conscience support this team anymore, fair enough.
And that's hard. That's hard, right?
Yeah.
If you've got years of history with a club you love, a club you've been brought up, that decision is really... But it can also be hard to think, what can I do as an individual person? So, for example, you're a Stoke fan. We spoke before about how it's funded by betting. If you were to turn around and say, I'm not going to support Stoke anymore, I don't agree with where the money comes from, it's easy for you to think, what good is that going to do? My seat is just going to be filled by someone else. But actually what you can do...
I'm not sure these days, Joe. I think
maybe not.
Yeah, I think it will just be an empty seat, but never mind.
An empty seat on a cold Tuesday night. But what we can do is we can pray.
Yeah.
We can pray about this. We can pray about what God is telling us to do. That whole thing. Again, Micah 6:8, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. How is God calling us to do that in these situations? In conversations we have with people around this as well.
Yeah.
But also let's be praying for people like Graeme.
Yeah.
We need more people like Graeme in football.
That's exactly what I came out of that conversation with. I was filled with hope that people like Graeme are running football clubs. I know he doesn't own a football club, but he is at the very top of a football club running it, and he is making decisions that impact how that club interacts with not just stuff on the pitch, but in the community as well. And I just think if we've got godly people, ethical, moral people doing that, I think that's only a good thing for our communities and for our clubs as well.
Absolutely. It's great to hear from Graeme Mathie, Sporting Director of Ayr United. Ed, we're doing so much for the Scottish lower leagues, aren't
I know,
we?
isn't this great?
Last week, Livingston. This week, Ayr United. Who's next? Give me another.
St Mirren. I'm just guessing a team. St Mirren.
Kilmarnock.
Quick Google. Where are
Forfar?
St Mirren.
East Fife.
Oh no, St Mirren are in the Premier League.
Oh,
they're fifth. They're doing well as well. Goodness me.
Ed, you've had a whole episode to think on my trivia question. How are you getting on?
Not well.
What's your knowledge of tall footballers like?
It's not great, to be honest. The only thing I've been able to do is to just look at centre-backs.
Okay.
So
it's a good starting point.
I just thought centre-backs, they're likely going to be your biggest players, aren't they?
Mm.
So I've just been going through random centre-backs that I think are tall. I've got one name. I don't think this is right, but I haven't got a better one.
I'm intrigued. Go on.
So I've gone for John Stones.
Oh, I thought you were going to have it then, Ed. I'm afraid that is incorrect. The answer is Dan Burn.
Dan Burn. He's in my FPL team as well.
He's so tall, Ed.
He's so tall.
He's so tall.
I'm so annoyed with that.
He does kind of play like a left back as well, so I'll let you off.
So how tall is Dan Burn?
He is 6'8".
What?
Yeah. He's a tall boy.
Gosh, I didn't think he was that tall though.
Tallest player in the Premier League, Fraser Forster.
Okay, very good.
He's taller than 6'8".
John Stones is barely 6'4", something like
6'2".
Do you think? Is he short?
I don't think he's short. I don't think he's tall.
John Stones is only 6'2". I had in my head he was like 6'5" or something. Oh, gosh.
Well, better luck next week.
No, I'm just not very good at this.
Oh, we should have done an easier quiz for you, shouldn't we?
Do you know what else I'm not good at?
Go on.
So, for the listeners, we have a UCB FPL here in the office.
Yeah.
Which I take part in, Joe takes part in, producer Anthony takes part in, and about another 15 or so UCB colleagues take part in. And I am right near the bottom.
How are you doing?
I'm not doing well. I think I'm currently 13th out of 17.
Okay.
You're doing quite well. You're around mid-table.
No, I'll take that.
Third in the table at the moment, Producer Anthony.
Oh, of course he is.
He's the man who knows most about football on this podcast.
And he is not on it.
Well, something you're not good at, Joe.
Oh, we're just airing our flaws now.
We are, yeah.
Okay.
This is the last episode of the podcast because we're just getting angry with each other. Something that you're not very good at, Joe, is fact-checking things you see on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not good at that, Ed. I read something on Twitter, it makes me laugh, and I spread it like it's the gospel.
Exactly, and this was talking about the animations on the Premier League.
In my defence, they have introduced some new animations. For when a team scores a goal. Yeah, I saw one on Twitter last week when Arsenal scored against Tottenham. It was the cannon from the Arsenal badge shooting I think it's a cockerel from the Tottenham badge down. Yeah. And then smoke appearing and it says North London is red. Yeah. Now I thought it was real.
And it turns out?
Very much not real.
Very much not real.
Someone's having a laugh on Twitter.
Oh, dear.
No, it's not the first time that's happened.
No.
And it won't be the last.
No, exactly. But to even things up, I also mentioned how you couldn't do something like that in 2024 and that the RSPCA would definitely get involved.
Okay.
But we had correspondence from Jack, the Sheffield Wednesday fan, on this.
If you could please let Ed know that whilst I enjoyed his attempt at humour, the RSPCA would have very little interest in a bird being shot by a cannon. And he's actually thinking of the RSPB. So if you could just let him know that'd be good. I'm sure he wants to avoid that kind of embarrassment again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. Thanks, Jack. We really appreciate that. So please get in touch and tell us what we're doing wrong. Because at this rate, we're doing it every week.
Yeah, he's got you there.
Did you know that I was a member of the RSPB's Young Ornithologists Club when I was a child?
Were you really?
I was.
Oh, and how's that gone?
I think I got a few magazines and then was never interested ever again.
Well, you'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. Look after your birds.
Look after your birds. This has gone everywhere.
Oh dear. Well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Man Up Top. If you want to get in touch with the show, please ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow, subscribe, give us good reviews, all that stuff, because this will really help us to get the word out. And also, if you've enjoyed this, tell your mates. Please pass on the pod to somebody. And also, a huge thank you to our producer, Anthony Selamat-Webb, for all his hard work behind the scenes. There will be a new episode next Tuesday.
There will.
See you later.
Bye.